1, 2. Here we go. Great. Yeah, good to be here. My name is Jaya. I have a job, which is working at a company called NIM, where we build privacy software. That's kind of where I spend most of my time. I also have the pleasure of running a series of discussions in London at an institute called IBRAZ on technology and power, which I mentioned for the sole reason that I had the pleasure of hosting someone else from No Tech from Apartheid recently as part of that discussion series, Vikram Subramanian, who was telling lots of people in London about No Tech for Apartheid and what brought him to be part of the organization, namely its mission to get rid of and abolish Project Nimbus that's run by Google and Amazon, servicing the Israeli genocide in Gaza. So today I have two other wonderful, wonderful members of No Tech for Apartheid, Eslem and Tobi. And we're going to get into a little bit of their own journey, what the organization does, and also how those of you who might be keen to get involved could do that, and what it takes to become an activist and achieve this mission of abolishing Project Nimbus. I might leave the kind of general intro at that and kind of turn to our wonderful guests. Eslem, do you want to introduce yourself and maybe talk a little bit about your journey? You used to work in big tech, now you're full-time with Nota. How did that journey play out? What brought you to that mission? What was your moment of realization? Yeah, please do introduce yourself.
Thank you. Hello, I am Eslem Demirel. I used to work for big tech. And now I am fully organizing with No Tech for Apartheid. What brought me to this mission is mainly I realized that big tech is directly deploying us as big tech workers to the battlefield without our consent. This means that we are complicit in war crimes, in genocide, occupation, and killing, and I no longer wanted to be complicit in such a system, and I think it was important for me to reclaim my agency and say I no longer want to be part of this and do something about it. Yeah.
And Tobi, you have been a scientist in the area of AI for about 10 years, but you also have a background working, campaigning in the kind of Stop Killer Robots campaign, which is, I think, a lobby organization, correct?
Yeah, it's a coalition. It's a coalition, yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to go into a little bit that kind of like backdrop and then what led you to become part of, because now you're also full-time with Nota, right?
Yeah, so I'm Tobi, also a full-time activist with Nota, No Tech for Apartheid. So I was an AI researcher for about 10 years or for over a decade now. I was always worried about some of the negative applications of technology, for example, autonomous weapons, so machines that kill without human intervention. Because of this, I worked with the campaign to stop killer robots for the last 5 years or so. So that campaign aims to regulate autonomous weapons internationally, essentially getting the states to agree on international treaties to regulate these weapons. About 2-3 years ago, the big tech companies and the big AI companies, one way or another, all started building autonomous weapons. So this completely fucked over these attempts to regulate these weapons, essentially. Totally destroyed that process. At that point, I realized that even with working in tech, as much as I love proving theorems and writing programs and building robots, with my labor there, even doing activism on the side to regulate these things, that simply wasn't going to happen. These weapons were going to be built by these companies. And at that moment, I realized I needed to reclaim agency over my life, the tech, what I was doing. And I needed to directly address the problem here, which is the big tech companies and the big AI companies. So that's how I got here.
And here we are. Do you want to talk a little bit about Nota and some of the actions that you've been up to and the kind of the state of the coalition so far? Because it's an open, decentralized network, effectively, of groups of people that can get involved and reclaim their own agency, correct? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So we're up to a variety of things. We do community building. So we basically get tech workers and the public, other people, to show up every 2 weeks in different cities, have conversations together, have a space where they can essentially feel free to speak about the things that they experience, the things that they care about, and we encourage them to work together on things. So for example, recently we've had some tech workers in Zurich by themselves deciding to map out all the big tech companies in their city and document the corporate crimes that they're complicit in, make a website so that it's available to everyone, just as a side project. I don't know, maybe Eslem can talk about some of the other things we've been up to.
Yeah, I mean, the main goal of these gatherings is not really the product they bring. Like, we don't expect some local group to come up with really fancy solutions to the militarization of technology. But it is actually a practice to reclaim agency on a bi-weekly basis, that you go to a space, you talk about the militarization of tech, and you do something about it. This is the most important part, that people actually reclaim agency to have a say, to push back, and to organize in a safe environment where they can get resources from NOTA, where we can provide financial and legal support for all these projects. Some of our projects are also more accountability actions. For example, we're also quite involved in direct action against big tech. We have various ways to hold big tech companies accountable. We have last year disrupted the AI for Good conference in Geneva, where a lot of big tech companies received a platform to kind of ethics wash their tech, saying we are doing AI for good. And we claimed the space and we claimed the stage and said, how can you talk about AI for good when we are in the midst of the first AI-powered genocide in the history of humankind? This is irresponsible and it's ignorant, and I think the important part there is that we take the space, we stop asking for permission or any representation to take action, we just go and do it, fix it ourselves.
Can you maybe both speak a little bit more about that kind of feeling of reclaiming agency, and maybe also in the context of the response that you've been getting so far as you go out and you're kind of setting up new local branches and so on? Because, obviously, I think it's kind of fairly well known that the leadership of most big tech companies is very aligned with Israel. But it seems like there's quite a big difference between leadership and actual employees. So is that true? What's the kind of reactions you've been getting so far? What's the interest? What's the kind of energy that you're feeling around this topic?
Yeah, I would say that there's two things. I mean, there's how it feels on an individual level for me. So having had this experience with activism, with essentially expecting governments to solve the problems for us and going out and supporting them in that, to just wake up every day and see problems and feel fully responsible for solving them directly, feels good. It's a liberating feeling to just do it instead of asking anyone for permission. And then as to the second, or as to speaking to people about it, it's also a very interesting experience. Sometimes people seem surprised that this is an option, that they can just do that. And I think this is something that we've really, especially with the tech workers, it's something that they've been conditioned to do, to just follow orders. They exist within these hierarchies where this is essentially, this is what they do every day. And it really takes this process of psychologically debugging yourself. It's an active process that you have to do every day. But people are kind of surprised when we tell them they can just do it. And then once they start doing it, they get excited. So yeah, this is actually a kind of an overwhelming and inspiring experience to go out and speak about this and to see people reclaiming agency over their own tech and their own lives.
Yeah, one interesting example, for example, was we were flyering at Google in Zurich, and it was a lot of Google engineers also taking part in flyering. And so we had the permit from the union to just stand there. I mean, we just asked, hey, can we go? And they said, yeah, sure. And first, the security of Google showed up. They were like, hey, what are you doing? This is political. And we were like, hey, your property is until here, and I'm standing here, so you have no say. And then they called the police, and the police showed up, and hey, what are you doing? Do you have a permit? And we said, yeah, we're from the union. And they said, oh, shit, we would have loved to arrest you. And then they left. But it's funny because so many Googlers come, and they have a really like pre-made opinion about the group. It seems like No Tech for Apartheid got really public and is known. So a lot of Googlers are like, yeah, I know your group. Yeah, I'm gonna join the next meeting. But some are like really like angry. They're like, so if we're not gonna produce tech for defense, are we gonna let China do it? And we're like, okay, if that's your biggest concern, that's like nice. But essentially the most interesting part is that big tech doesn't want their employees to have this political debate. And you can see this by all the content moderation. Like if there was this thread in Google that was like a meme channel kind of, and there was just a post where somebody had a black background and they just put the words, genocide is bad. And it got censored immediately. It's not even a political state, it's an international law. It's like common sense. A genocide is bad. But somehow this triggered somebody and they just deleted it. Or like another person posted like the research of Francesca Albanese on the occupation of, the economy of occupation to the economy of genocide. And literally the co-founder of Google, like Sergey Brin, he just shows up in a random small chat and is like, hey, the UN is publicly anti-Semite. We shouldn't talk about the UN. Like, this is funny. And the amount of censorship just shows how important the opinion of tech workers are. Like, the level of censorship is so ridiculous that you can tell they are actually in power. The tech workers are in power, and their opinion matters.
Yeah, I think that's a really essential point here, because I think in the public imagination, there's a little bit this idea that you have people that build software, and then you have these semi-autonomous, weapons that then go off and do things on their own, and really, what power do we have to stop them, because the weapons are just out there doing their thing. But the point that I've been hearing both of you make over and over again today is that like the workers do have the power, and in fact these systems require a lot of maintenance. I'm wondering if like it's worth going into the systems at all. Do we want to kind of talk about what Project Nimbus actually is, and how it kind of has powered, for example, Lavender and Where's Daddy AI targeting systems that led to I think 57,000 killings in the first couple of weeks alone of the genocide. I'm sure probably a lot of the audience actually is aware of these systems already, but it might be worth kind of just talking through them.
Yeah. I mean, so Project Nimbus is a joint project by Amazon, Google, and now also Anthropic. It's $1.2 billion worth, and it's running since 2021. It was signed in Dublin, on the side of Google at least, and essentially this project has been running, and since October 2023 there has been more and more requests of Israel to get access to Google and Amazon clouds, especially to store surveillance data on Palestinians and to optimize targeting and killing. And essentially what Project Nimbus is doing is providing cloud and AI services to the Israeli occupation forces. And by providing this amount of storage and computation, the Israeli occupation forces are the first kind of group of people that ever have this amount of data and technology to actually commit a genocide at this scale. In the beginning, I said we are in the first AI-powered genocide in the history of humankind. What does this mean? It means that we have insanely evolved technology that is given to the hands of people that are ready to commit war crimes, genocide, and these war crimes and genocides are being carried out with technology that the tech workers didn't sign up for. This is technology that's being misused. Like, I think at the last IDF conference in the 2025, they admitted that they used Google Photos to target associates of targets. And this is, do you think anyone that worked on Google Photos ever thought they will be complicit in a genocide? Like, this entire pitch of Google Photos was to have your photos stored somewhere, and you can have a category with your cat, your mom, your sister, and then you have a good overview of your photos. And like, the idea of it was to be practical and very useful, and everyone that worked on Google Photos had like this assurance that there's a code of conduct and you are doing this so you improve society and everyone has more access to their folders. But this being misused is a violation. And I can go more into the details of this violation, but maybe you can talk more about Lavender and Gospel, or where I study.
Yeah, right. So the Lavender, the Gospel system, was a system essentially for target generation. So in the beginning of the genocide, very quickly, the IDF, the Israeli military, found themselves in the situation where they had more weapons to deploy than they had targets to deploy those weapons against. So they came up with an AI system, essentially based on surveillance, on tracking people's phones. The AI system would then say, the owner of this phone is a Hamas operative with a score of 0.7, where, for example, where 1 means for sure, Hamas operative, 0 means civilian. They would then basically just adjust the threshold to whatever. It was just the number being spat out by the machine. It would then generate targets, and then these targets would then be approved by a human, and then set down the kill chain, essentially meaning that the mobile phone would be bombed. With Where's Daddy, it would even be bombed when the phone was at a residential building. So after this person returned home, they would bomb the home of the person, taking out their families as well. Now, due to whistleblowers within the Israeli military, we know that this critical decision in the middle, where a human approved the target that was generated by the AI system, took on average 10 seconds and amounted to listening to a call on this surveilled phone. Is the voice male? It's male? Okay, kill. So this is a system, this is not even an autonomous weapon, but it's one of these examples of AI-enabled sort of surveillance-like systems, AI-powered weapon systems that dehumanize, essentially, and make humans do things that they wouldn't otherwise do, or at least make the horrible things that they want to do more scalable, more efficient.
Yeah, so that's what we're up against. And again, to come back to the kind of power and agency that there exists to resist these systems, do you want to talk a little bit about the coalitions that have been built across workers in other sectors as well? Yeah, like... Yeah?
So we have now our first big coalition with the dock workers in Italy. The dock workers have successfully blocked the shipment of war material to Israel last year at the historic Blocchiamo Tutto strike. So there was a call for action after the Sumut flotilla, this humanitarian aid mission, got intercepted. And there was a call by the dock workers to block all shipment of war material to Israel. And they were extremely successful because there were fallouts. And we have now successfully started a coalition with the dock workers to also reclaim our agency over technology and stop the providing of and the servicing of tech for apartheid.
I would maybe also add to that of why does it matter that these big tech workers go on strike? So for example, in Zurich, where this is the main hub basically for the cloud, Google's cloud, you have 1,000 cloud engineers that go to work every day. The cloud is not something that just is there and just runs on these machines and always works. It breaks constantly. The IDF requires this cloud in order to operate. if just 200 of these engineers don't go to work, the IDF cannot continue their genocide. It continuously breaks. Of course, they will replace the tech worker. Tech workers are a little bit harder to replace than many other workers, but not impossible. But it takes a week to find a new engineer. So if we can actually organize these tech workers to strike, it actually makes a tangible difference. It actually stops Israel from doing what it's doing in Gaza.
So we are going to start thinking, if you guys could think about questions that you might want to ask Eslem and Tobi. I have one last question, which is, how can people get involved? How does one become an activist? And if not an activist in terms of direct action, how can people support No Tech for Apartheid at this point?
Yeah, I mean, just stop. Like, if you are in an industry that is actively involved and you know, or you have a feeling and you want to talk about it, just go to a NOTA meeting, launch NOTA in your city, contact us. We have a website, notechforapartheid.eu. It's the European group, or if you're in the US, there's an European American branch. But join No Tech for Apartheid. Anyone can join. The entire concept is that the entire public reclaims agency over the militarization of technology. So this means everyone has a say, and there will be big tech employees, there will be artists, there will be designers, writers. The point is that everyone comes together at a table and says, okay, I have these skills, I have identified these 5 cards I have on me, now I'm gonna use these 5 cards to the best of my ability to counter this, to identify the most tangible action in your city. For example, I don't know, I go Berlin, there's an Amazon Tower, you can go flyer, or like you can go inform, do awareness events, or like in some way to do community building, because there's not many third spaces outside of home and work where people can go to. And also most big tech employees in Europe are on a work visa basis, so they usually just come to the city for work, and they don't have any other idea of their rights or their any social connect, their laws. They don't know they have no concept. So they usually are depending on locally established groups. So to do community building is actually the biggest thing you can do against big tech. And as we know, the biggest fear that big tech has is that their own employees develop a conscience and empathy and integrity and have compassion with the targets or the people that are being targeted by the tools that they produce. Because when big tech employees ask questions, this lie starts to shatter, and they start to get active and ask questions, and then maybe they even are ready to act.
Do you want to add anything to that, Tobi?
I think it was a pretty good ending. Maybe we should take the questions now.
Yeah.
Take one.
Yeah, first of all, thanks a lot for your work. It really means a lot. So I'm also Palestinian, so for me it really means a lot. And I was wondering, do you have faced any like repercussions in your I mean in your career for sure, but like in your private life, did you have to deal with any attacks, like cyber attacks, like anything like that?
First of all, Tahia Palestine! And second, yeah, I mean, they try to hack us, but we have the best hackers in the world.
Maybe just a funny anecdote there, not to spend too much time on it. So there was a case in Switzerland, in Bern, where the Swiss police were doxing Palestine protesters. So after a protest, they released a bunch of pixelated photos of the protesters. They said, you have 1 or 2 weeks, 10 days? You have 10 days to turn yourselves in. Otherwise, we release the unpixelated photos. So at the same time as they launched their website, 2 days later, we launched our own website with all the heads of the Bern police, pixelated. And then 10 days later, we also unpixelated it. And then we just did some, open, publicly available information, outlining basically what the opinions of these heads of police were, the ties they had to the Zionist lobby, and so on. At some point, after I think 2 weeks, we saw that we had about 20,000 failed login attempts to our website, to the SSH. Then we put up an Instagram post with some clown music, you know, like try harder. And the next day, the number of login attempts had doubled.
Yeah, I mean, we have like people that are angry at our work, but we also have the best lawyers. And if you want to support us and in our work, this I forgot to mention, we are currently trying to fundraise 2 million Swiss francs to be able to free capacities of people to do full-time no-tech for apartheid. So if you have any concept of financial like support or anything, you can meet us after the event.
Yes.
There's another.
One more? Okay. One last question then. Yeah.
Thank you again for your talk. I wanted to ask, regarding when you're talking about lavender, if you're talking about gospel, it's really jarring to me to see like the role that algorithms and numbers can play in the rationalization of the justification of things like war crimes and genocide. So I just wanted to ask you, people with more tech inside, right, than the average person, what problems and what challenges do you encounter when you're trying to explain and communicate that this is how you can manipulate the numbers? Because in the Tagesschau, these are the numbers that the IDF is publishing and that the general public, for example, in Germany, will be given. So yes, that's my question. What challenges do you encounter, maybe also with tech workers?
I mean, the fundamental problem with this is that the numbers are kind of arbitrary. When you really look at these AI systems, the numbers are actually not particularly meaningful. Somebody made a decision to build a certain kind of system. A lot of values, worldviews, beliefs went into that action of building a system like Lavender. I don't think the numbers matter a lot. I would say mostly they're a distraction even. Of course, the stats can matter. Okay, they scaled up from having a few, maybe 500 targets to 5,000 targets, and they killed all those people. I mean, of course, in sort of the scale of numbers, we forget that these are human lives, but those numbers matter. I think a lot of the sort of numbers around the AI models, they're just a distraction, in my opinion.
I think also, like, if you build an AI that's called Where's Daddy, it's kind of something wrong with your head. Like, why are you calling it Where's Daddy? Like, are you okay? This means literally that you are targeting parents, like you're targeting a father of somebody, of a loved one, and that this person is gonna ask, where's daddy? Because your daddy's phone got just targeted. Like, I think it's also like the cynicism is so open. Like, at least the Nazis had some propaganda machine or something, and like they had some concept, but the Israelis are like so bland with it. I'm like, wow. Thank you.
Thank you.